and nobody gives a crap anymore about Star Trek. And that is one of the greatest injustices in life. I might say, I will say, and I will say it again, it is an injustice. There are more betterer Star Trek movies than there are Star Wars movies. More betterer ones, 100% more. Why anymore? I was actually watching Star Wars Episode 9 the other day again because I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this another chance. One more time. I'm gonna maybe try to watch this movie. And this time around, I felt the same. It's a terrible movie still. What's up, WO88? Welcome to the show. Talking about Star Trek. It might come as a curveball for you because it is May, and everybody knows that May the 5th be with you, and that means Star Wars. But they forget about May 6th, the day it's Star Trek. This El Star Treco de Mayo. But first, I'd like to remind you that every day we do this. Every day at noon here on Instagram, on YouTube. I'm also researching different ways to go live on all the other platforms like Twitch and Facebook and even TV and maybe out my window. There's all different kinds of platforms I could use. I could use this actual soapbox and I could use these platforms, but it's high tech and I'm trying to still figure it out. There's lots involved. This technology, I have to use know-how. I have to use certain advanced things from the future, not unlike Star Trek, which takes place 200 years in our future. If you guys are a fan of Star Trek like I am, you're a fan for perhaps different reasons. If you're a fan of both franchises, Star Wars and Star Trek, you might say, hey, I like them both. I like them both for different reasons. I like them both for similar reasons. One gives me something and the other one doesn't give me something. And that can go for everything. Hey, Tatiana Wilkinson on YouTube. What's up, Will on YouTube? Y'all are the best. You've been here from the very beginning of these live streams, at the very least, if not for longer, watching my show on Aristotle Full Throttle, my channel on YouTube, AristotleFullThrottle.com. You can also see that I got like a little sticker on the, here, let me move it around, on the live stream on YouTube. Today we're talking about Star Trek, not Star Wars. We're going to do a Trek day. As you can see, I have conflicting imagery right over my shoulder. I've got Star Trek, and then I've got Star Wars right above it. But, if you're a Trekker, you on May the 4th, you just say Happy Holidays. You just kind of skip over that. Is there a holiday for Star Trek? There should be. All right, everybody, go. Your favorite Star Trek movie. Out of the movies. We're talking about the movies, maybe not the series. We can get into the series later. Your favorite series. Obviously, the best one is the original series. If you've watched the original series, there's no arguing. It's inarguable. But I would like to hear your opinion on why you think Star Trek Discovery is the best, or maybe even Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine, I actually watched all of it. Problem with Deep Space Nine for me was, hey, look, Star Trek was all about exploring strange new worlds, seeking out new life and new civilization, to boldly go where no, parentheses, one, because they had to fix that. I don't know if you remember they fixed that in, I don't know which Star Trek, maybe the first movie, the second movie, the third one, but that was a really good update because Star Trek has always been woke for its time. Star Trek is a woke show. It's the original woke. It's the OG woke Star Trek, if you think about it, because in the 60s, they was doing stuff ridiculously great. But that's the moment in which Star Trek movie is that where they say to boldly go where no man, where no one has gone before. They update it. It's pretty cool. I love that. Yeah, because, man, my favorite thing ever is, and when I say favorite thing ever, I really slather lots of sarcasm on that. My favorite thing ever is when you look at an evolutionary chart and then they show like a chimpanzee and then followed by some other hominin and then like another hominid, but then it's like they're all in a line. They're all in a straight line, right? First of all, chimpanzees are our cousins. They're basically, we come from the same, we're all apes, everybody. Hate to break it to you, we're apes. So it's funny to me that they would have different versions of that each level, particularly since they only hey Satya, what's up? Hello, welcome to the chat on Instagram Live. I was just talking about how the evolutionary chart is hilarious because it always shows a series of just males, dudes, guys, from a chimpanzee to a human dude, right? You know, you've seen that, the evolution of modern man, it's called. And there's only one, it's only a dude. And humans are made up of two sexes. That's not how humans evolve. Humans just don't go, I'm a chimp and now I'm a man. Love Star Trek, the motion picture. I always call it Star Trek, the motion picture. It's the first one. It came out in like 1979. It is Star Trek, the motion picture. Lest anybody be confused, Star Trek, the motion picture, I love it a lot. People didn't like it because they thought maybe it was boring. It was rated G. A lot of kids didn't like rated G. I remember when I was a kid, a friend of mine was like, I don't watch rated G shows. That's lame. It's got to be PG-13 or above for me. That was my friend. He was tough. He was ahead of the game. He wanted to be way cooler. Watching rated G stuff. I'm like, dude, some stuff is just good and inoffensive all around. And he was like, rated G, I'm out. He just didn't like the rated G idea. But Star Trek, the motion picture was really fantastic. I thought it was great ideas. The whole idea of humanity merging with alien life. That's the beauty of Star Trek. It was always about bigger social themes. Star Wars is about glowy lightsaber duels. Listen, I might bash Star Wars a little today, even though it's like my favorite thing ever almost. Not really my favorite thing ever. The beach is actually up there. The beach is probably, I like the beach and music and guitars. I like guitars. I like bass guitars. Wait, let me start listing all my favorite things. Cupcakes. But I don't know if I like them better than Star Wars. Tatiana Wilkinson says, many of the films with the original cast are good. I like Search for Spock because he's such an interesting character. Yes, Search for Spock is a good one. That's Star Trek 3. Tatiana brings up Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Listen, I know these movies back to front, except for Star Trek 9, Insurrection. I can never get through it. I have not gotten through it to this day, Star Trek 9, Insurrection. I fall asleep every time it's on. I used to actively seek it out so that I could go to sleep. I fall asleep 45 minutes into that movie without fail. What's up, DTLA? Jay joined. Yeah, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, ironically, incidentally, even though he's the titular character, I like to say that term, titular. Get your mind out of the gutter. Get your mind out of the gutter balls. Titular character, Spock, he is barely in The Search for Spock. They find him and then it's over. They spend the whole movie searching for him because it's called The Search for Spock, and they find him and it's over. Here's a fun thing about Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4. Star Trek 3 and 4. Star Trek 3 is directed by Leonard Nimoy. I like to say Leonard Nimoy. It's directed by him, and that's why he's barely in it, because he dies, spoiler alert, at the end of Wrath of Khan, the best Star Trek. We'll get to that. We skipped right over it somehow, because everybody knows it's the best one. But Star Trek 3, Spock is barely in it. He's like, there's some flashbacks, there's some footage from Star Trek 2, and then at the end he shows up and he's like, you are and will always be my friend. And it's like so touching. It's wonderful. I love it. Friendship. Star Trek's about friendship. Friends with aliens, friends with humans. So Leonard Nimoy only was barely in Star Trek 3, but of course, Christopher Lloyd plays the Klingon bad guy who is great in it. But then, the Klingon bastards killed Kirk's son. Man, I'm just going through all of the scenes from all the movies in my head now. But Star Trek 3 is great, but that goes right into Star Trek 4, which is phenomenal. I agree with Tatiana Wilkinson. The best of the Star Trek movies are the ones with the original cast. However, The Next Generation does have a good movie in there. It has a really solid, good one in there. But Star Trek 4, Leonard Nimoy also directed. And that's the one where they go back in time. And because he directed it, he didn't have much time to put on his ears and his eyebrows every day. Because, Satya, you'll know this. You're a makeup artist. And, well, you're an actual makeup artist. But Spock would wear, like, prosthetic ears and the eyes and the eyebrows. But in the movie, they go back in time, and people might say, hey, your eyebrows are pointy and your ears are pointy in the 80s in the Bay Area, where the crew goes back in time to from the 60s. But that was actually practical because Leonard Nimoy didn't have time every morning to sit in the makeup chair because he had to like prepare the script and prepare the cast for their parts and all of this stuff. So he just kind of went around going through like an hour or two of makeup to get his several hours probably, his hair, his eyebrows, his ear brows. Yeah, the latest thing in the Star Trek universe everybody is talking about is Picard. I know, Will, you said you haven't seen it yet. Tatiana mentions, have you seen it? Have you seen Picard? Has anybody seen Picard? I have not seen it yet. I really do want to hear it. Android from what I've seen. But I do want to see that. I want to see it. I hear there's certain shows that are out there. You ever like not see a show yet and you hear everybody talking about it, but they're kind of talking about it in vague terms where you don't know whether or not they like it, and you don't know whether or not you're gonna like it, or you don't know whether or not they're liking it or they're gonna. There was a movie I saw recently. There were a few movies like this where I didn't quite understand what people meant when they would talk about it. Like, I think it was movies like Black Panther or Get Out. There would be people who would say like, I'm really glad they made this movie. I'm really glad about the, I saw it and I was really happy about the fact that this is a movie. And I just don't know what they think about the movie itself. And I realized later that there's some people that are afraid to say that they didn't like something. That might be an indicator of their not willingness to admit they don't like something. So when a movie comes out that's like Black Panther, which I liked, it was pretty good. It's a cool character. I didn't love it as much as a lot of other people loved it. I think there's people who really loved it. And I think there's a weird little slippery slope that people get on when they're like, I should like this because it's socially significant. And that's why I do like the social significance of a movie like Black Panther, for instance, because the main cast, it's a $200 million movie that made hundreds of millions of dollars, and the cast is primarily black, and that's never happened before in the history of all of movies, guys. That might blow your mind, but that's really culturally significant and important. However, it's funny because some people are like me, who are like, it was okay. But then there are some people who are afraid to say that it was just okay, and they go, I'm really happy that there was a movie that did this. And they kind of like dance around the subject, and I just think it's so hilarious. Just come on, guys. It's okay. A $200 million movie can be just all right, because there are plenty of them. However, it is important that all groups of people get the opportunity to make $200 million just okay movies, not just one group of people, which it has been for 120 years. Getting back to Star Trek, this all relates because Star Trek is pretty cool, because Star Trek has always pushed the envelope of social awareness. If you remember the original series, there was all sorts of stuff that was like super duper crazy and wacky for 50 years ago when Star Trek first came out. Can you believe Star Trek premiered in 1967 And Captain Kirk is still around, man. Captain Kirk, I just saw him 2 years ago after a screening of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, the best Star Trek. He was there and he did a 1 hour Q&A after the movie, and he was hilarious, and he's 175 years old. He was hilarious, though. He was telling all these stories about being on the original set, and at this point, they're stories that he probably told, and then everybody heard them, and then he heard them again, and then was like, that's a cool story. I don't remember it. It was 150 years ago. Captain Kirk is pretty amazing. 50 years ago, he and Nichelle Nichols, the actress who plays Uhura, they kiss on TV. Now, this might not seem at all impressive or significant to anybody, because in fact, if you watch it, it's actually pretty awkward and just like, okay, so what? Just looks like a space Captain Kirk and Uhura kissing. But in the 60s, bro, they could not deal. They could not deal with this idea, this visual. It's just a bizarre time, man. And just think about that. That was like a big deal on TV in America, because it is America. Just wrap your brain around that. But Star Trek has always done that. Star Trek takes concepts and turns them into fantasy fiction stuff, and it's really great. Tatiana says Picard is really good, and she promises you'll like it, or she'll owe everyone a pizza, not just Will. Tatiana, sorry, I just put you on the spot. You're gonna owe everybody a pizza who doesn't like it. Don't worry, there's only about a dozen or so of us. It's great, though. It's building. Every day this show is building, and I'm excited about this. I'm very happy that you guys are coming to join me. Mr. Tallboy, thank you for joining me. I'm Aristotle Full Throttle. This is a show about movies. We talk about movies every day here at noon on Instagram Live at Aristotle Full Throttle and on AristotleFullThrottle.com, which is my channel that I've had for years now. Got a lot of videos up on there. Guess what? I have a giveaway going on. I'm going to give away a PS5 probably. I say probably because I'm definitely going to give away a PS4 if I get to 10,000 subscribers. But if I get to 10,000 subscribers after the PS5 comes out, then you get a PS5 instead. So subscribe to AristotleFullThrottle.com, and the way you qualify to win is by commenting. You can comment a lot. I would say that the more you comment, the more videos you watch and comment on that I've made, because I have had a channel for several years now, and there are hundreds of videos for you to comment on, and all you got to do is watch them, be probably mildly amused, hopefully. That's like the whole point. Really, the point of my videos is to maybe just help you forget not to be angry that your toast got burnt in the morning or that someone peed in your Cheerios. I am here to put milk in your Cheerios. That's basically what it's for. If you comment, you can qualify to win a PS4 plus a game. It's pretty simple. It's great. It's actually an easy way to win stuff. It's easy money, right, Will? I've had giveaways before on this channel, and people have gotten away with stuff. So it's cool stuff. You can win stuff here at Aristotle Full Throttle. I've also got stickers. That's my face. Let's see. Marvel uses doppelganger as a climax in most of their films to this day. Yeah, Will. You know, it's interesting that you say that about the doppelganger situation. Yeah, Marvel does have it. I was watching a lot of those pitch meeting videos. What's up, Jimmy James Cordova? We're talking about movies today. Welcome, Jimmy James, everybody. You all know him, the famous Jimmy James Cordova. I believe you're from Texas. Father-to-be, stalwart, fan of Aristotle Full Throttle, showing up, supporting. You guys are great. I appreciate this. We're actually forming our own little club, our own little group of movie chat, and it's very fulfilling and fun because you guys have so many great ideas and thoughts on these movies. Today, particularly, we're talking about Star Trek movies, and that there are, frankly, more movies of higher quality than the Star Wars movies. Not that it should be a competition, but Star Wars loses. Guys, my beard. It's like we could like time lapse these daily shows and watch my neck beard get more full. Listen, I would not be a valid nerd if I were not growing a neck beard. So please, thank you. This is dedication right here. Like you can call me a certifiable neckbeard because I'm sitting here talking about Star Trek with a neckbeard. Thank you. I am in that club. Join me in my club of neckbeards. There's nothing wrong with the neckbeard. I gotta tell you, I make fun, I joke, I kid, but neckbeards. There's a reason for it. It's your badge. It's your badge of honor, guys. It just shows that look, I could shave. I choose not to. Or I forgot to shave for 3 weeks. I forget to shave. That's my neck beard situation. Yeah, it's Satya. Grow your neck beard out. Look, yeah, it's like I don't know what you do about the neck beard situation, but I'm like, why waste razors? I hope we can all just let vanity go and just talk about movies for the rest of human history. Let's see. Pushing the envelope. Yeah, Tatiana, the whole pushing the envelope of social issues about the original series of Star Trek, significant, important. They were willing to do that. And of course, they got canceled. But they came back as an animated series in like 1972 or 1974. And then they did like 2 seasons of an animated series with all the original cast doing the voices. And then they came out with the motion picture, which was fantastic. I call it Star Trek the Motion Picture, rated G, 1979-ish, around then. But then, of course, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Guys, we got to talk about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. How do we even bring this up? Oh, we'll get to Nemesis and Tom Hardy. I call Tom Hardy. There's another actor who looks just like Tom Hardy. Let me find him. You guys can Google this. Maybe I could find him. Here. There's going to be a quick... I'm going to use a visual aid for the first time ever on this show. Not true. But we're going to get to that. I definitely want us to talk about Star Trek 2 because it is the best one. Let's see. What's that actor's name that looks like Tom Hardy? Does anybody remember? Logan Marshall Green. Look at this guy. I mean, come on. The dude. They both got neck beards just like me. Oh, you can't see. Logan Marshall Green. They are the same guy. I call him Tom Hardley. Tom Hardy's a fantastic actor. It's okay. I can glue it. Tom Hardy is a fantastic actor, but he was in Nemesis. He played a young Picard. Yeah, isn't that weird, Satya? That guy looks just like him. They look the same. They're the same guy. Except one's a better actor. However, they were both in a movie that were extremely similar at the same time. Tom Hardy was famously in Venom, where he is infected by an alien parasite that talks to him in his mind, and then he can, like, have superpowers. Like, you know what I'm talking about? And then Logan Marshall, Green Book, he was in a movie called Upgrade, which was about a guy who gets like an operation of a computer that goes inside his spine that can control his body and he can have superpowers. It was the same concept. So I think maybe there was a mix-up where they were sending the scripts because they were like, these guys look the same. Who knows? Who cares? We'll just get this. We'll get one or the other. Tom Hardy's price tag must go down now since there are two. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, starring Ricardo Montalban. He played Khan in the series, the original series. This is why. This is one of the many reasons why that Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is the best Star Trek movie, and you guys can work on changing my mind, and I'm open to it. But the cool thing is, in the original series, I believe it might have been season 1, a late episode, they introduce a character, Khan Noonien Singh, played by Ricardo Montalban. And during the episode, there's a conflict. He tries to take over the ship. They eject him onto a planet and leave him there to die. So what happens is, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Khan intercepts. He builds a community. He becomes a cult leader on the planet that he was ejected on, and all of these people are his followers and his children and stuff. And then he finds Kirk, and he's like, yo, bro, remember in the original series when you dumped me on that planet like 10 years ago, 15 years ago? I can't forget that. I definitely remember that. Now I've got some wrath, and I'm going to wrath on you. So that's pretty rad. That's like a tie-in to the original series. And the movie itself is actually pretty dramatic. It's a legit horror film, if you think about it. It's kind of a terrorizing space horror film because Alien, of course, was famous a few years before that. And that's the vein it's in. If you watch that movie, there are some terrifying scenes and pretty dramatic. Directed by Mark Leonard, I believe. I actually saw a showing of Star Trek 4 and 6 because he wrote a lot of the Star Trek movies. Mark Leonard Nimoy. Mark Leonard, interesting guy, writer. I watched a screening over at the Egyptian down the street of Star Trek 4 and 6, and he was there to do a Q&A after and talked about working with Ricardo Montalban and working with William Shatner. Now, everybody makes fun of William Shatner and his overacting or perhaps his overzealousness when he is very excited. He's a very excitable actor. He gets wound up. He gets turnt, as it were. So what happens is Mark Leonard knew this about William Shatner. Mark Leonard, the director, I believe his name's Mark Leonard, knew this about William Shatner. He's like, listen, William Shatner, you have a tendency to act like William Shatner, okay? Now, in order for me to outsmart William Shatner and his acting, Mark Leonard said that what he would do is he would do 11 or 12 takes. So when he'd say that when William Shatner came out and first would deliver his lines, he'd be like, Khan, blah, blah, blah. I'm William Shatnering I'm Shatnering all over the set right now. He would do that. And then he said and then by the 12th take, he'd be so tired and worn out that he would just say the lines. He'd say, he'd just kind of deliver them. So if you watch Star Trek II, there's a very conservative. I was just talking about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, the best of the Star Trek movies, because there are, 10, 11, 12, 13 Star Trek movies. And there are 9 Star Wars movies, but then you can say there are 11 Star Wars movies because there are 2 extra ones. Maybe 13, 12 or 13? 12 Star Wars movies. The discussion today is particularly which is the best Star Trek movie? And all of the Star Trek movies are definitely better than the Star Wars movies. Maybe not all of them, but there are definitely more better Star Trek movies than there are Star Wars movies. And that is a correct grammatical sentence. What's up, Dooney? I call him Dooney or her Dooney. I don't know their gender, but do not follow me. I'm serious is their tag, but I have affectionately relabeled them Dooney. Welcome. Talking about Star Trek. Another fun thing about that I learned from the director and writer of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, watching a Q&A after watching the movies, is that he said that, of course, Ricardo Montalban is on set with William Shatner, and the two of them, it's just like they're on fire all day, just screaming at each other. And the first day that he worked with Ricardo Montalban, Ricardo comes out and he was just so over the top. And you might think he's pretty over the top in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, because he is. But he was so over the top that he called a meeting with Ricardo Montalban, brought him back to the trailer and said, listen, Ricardo, you know, I think the direction we want to go here with the character Khan. And Ricardo Montalban stopped him. He's like, oh, you want to direct me? I think it's a really funny story, because that was immediately when Ricardo Montalban gained his respect for Mark Leonard and was like, oh, this is going to be fun, because he does actually want to, like, Ricardo Montalban is a great actor, and he's like, listen, I just need some direction. And they ironed it out, worked it out, and they made a great movie. Classic. Khan is the best Star Trek villain for sure, aside from the Borg. Yeah, the Borg. She was amazing. She was a great villain. She's probably the best villain, yeah. Khan and the Borg. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Dooney is a guy, everyone. Star Trek, so at the end of Star Trek 2, Star Trek has got that great moment with Khan. You guys remember that? Spacebar. Sorry, I have 2 keyboards. As you need 2 keyboards. Everybody has 14 hands. What happened? Oh, my video went out. Hang on, guys. All right. And we're back. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. I'm my own director and producer and talent. You know, I've got so many people working behind the scenes here. It's ridiculous. And if you guys want to support the high-tech level of this show, you can go to patreon.com/AristotleFullThrottle and and support the channel. I just saw that the live feed caught up. Sorry, guys. On Instagram, you guys don't know what's happening right now, but I lost my camera for a second there. But Khan, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, William Shatner, so good in that. And the scene, guys, this is a big spoiler if you haven't seen it, but that moment, I'm going to get choked up because it's very important. That moment when Spock dies, I lose it every time. I was in the theater, grown man, with my best good friend David, my best good Star Trek buddy and Star Wars buddy. We were in the movies, and we were watching the Star Trek II, just weeping when Spock dies. Because it means something. It actually meant something. Because Spock is a cultural phenomenon. Spock, the character, and the show, what he represents, is a very important, culturally significant thing. So when he dies in the movie, that's like an actual cultural impact. You know, a character like Spock, he's a meme. He's this guy. He dies. But, you know, only for like a movie. And then he comes back for like, how many more movies? 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. He comes back for like 6 more movies. Let's see. Dooney asks, if the universe of Star Wars and Star Trek were to go head-to-head in a battle royale, team battle, who would survive? Easily Star Trek. Because so much of Star Wars is about brute force, and Star Trek is about connecting through humanity. And connecting through humanity is what usually always wins. But, you know, Star Wars is very much about brute force. Star Trek is always about outsmarting. Because if you remember the way that Kirk outsmarts the chess game that is Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Khan, you got to remember, is a genetically superior ultra genius, like the smartest human who's ever lived and the most genetically superior. That's why he has got giant striated pectoral muscles. This is part of the character. You have to understand. You gotta you have to embed yourself in that thought, and and just and say, okay, giant pectoral muscles equals superior. This is why he's walking around with his shirt off. He's trying to demonstrate his might. But Khan is actually a superior human, and the whole idea is he's just so narcissistic and self-important that he thinks he can outsmart Kirk, and he just wants to toy with Kirk the whole movie. But Kirk, with his friends and his gut instinct, because Kirk is always gut, there are the three main characters in Star Trek. I find this brilliant. Are Bones, Kirk, and Spock. And out of those three, you've got the three dimensions that make up humankind, really. Our psyche. You've got the reason, Spock. The heart, who is Bones. Bones is always like, damn it, man, what's wrong with you? Can't you see that this man is sick? Like, it's always just leading with his heart. And Kirk leads with his gut, which has only gotten bigger. He's a great example of going with your gut and just really leaning into your gut and creating and cultivating your gut. It's about your gut. He is a great captain because he takes all of these things into consideration, and it shows through teamwork you can beat someone who is maybe self-involved and narcissistic and way just up their own ass and just all about themselves and really, trying to make everyone responsible for their own faults and perhaps their own misery, and trying to have everyone else accountable for their problems when they should really be dealing with their problems on their own. Oh wait, this got personal. Sorry. But Khan loses, and it's pretty fantastic. And he loses because they have certain... Do you guys remember how he loses? They retrofit a photon torpedo to detect certain types of gases because they're an exploratory ship. Star Trek is about exploring strange new worlds. It's not about battling. So that's the thing, Dooney. When you talk about battling, Star Wars and Star Trek... Star Wars is awesome. I love it. But wars is in the title. It's about wars. Star Trek is about journey and finding and exploring and understanding. So that's what happens when you get J.J. Abrams involved, because he's like, okay, well, they're in space. Why don't we have them all shoot each other up? Star Trek 2 doesn't have much in the way of spectacular violence. It just has really good chess game going on through the whole movie. It's about outwitting the enemy. But they retrofit that photon torpedo, and that is why Spock has to die, because Spock has to jump in and touch some radioactive stuff and in order to make the thing go according to plan. This is when movies had compelling reasons for character deaths and compelling reasons to do things that had to be done, where you were like, well, this has to be done. Someone has to do it. Spock is going to do it because he's going to sacrifice the one for the sake of the many. This is the whole point. And it's very compelled. It goes along with the theme of the entire movie. This is when movies had characters and themes. They don't really anymore. Movies are just like, I liked that explosion. Good thing they were exploding things for 2 hours in that movie. Otherwise, I would not have been entertained. Dooney says the Jedi in Star Wars ain't about teamwork life because one Jedi wipes out platoons of stormtroopers. Yeah, that's true. They're very kind of like, it seems weird that they'd all just run around chopping. Listen, I'm talking a lot about Star Trek too. Yeah, I guess Star Trek. So Will says you can connect Star Trek to Star Wars. Star Wars occurs in the Quadrant Q, pulled from Borg deep in the past. The Borg are actually a Sith experiment of combining the droid army with clone troopers and then using the dark side. Interesting. I like it. However, interesting. Maybe. Because Star Wars takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So technically, we could be in the same universe as Star Wars. Who knows? The beauty of the universe itself is that there are billions of galaxies. And out of those, I'm like a toddler. I just burp. You might have to pat me on the back. Maybe it's the way I'm sitting. The funny thing about Star Wars, it could the galaxy itself, the universe itself. The beauty of the universe is that there are billions of galaxies, and in those billions of galaxies, there are billions of stars. And it's pretty common occurrence that each star has a planet. That on average, they think that every star in every galaxy has at least one planet. Can you imagine, just mathematically, how certain, almost near certain it is that we're just not the only, like, globular types of living things? I'd like to say globular. Most of us. I've seen Wall-E. I like Aristotle Full Toddler. Thank you. Will. Thank you for that name. I will go by that from now. I'm Aristotle Full Toddle. Top toddler. You win for the day, Will, for that quote, that comment. Yeah. The Jedi in Star Wars versus, say, I don't know, who would be the equivalent to a Jedi in Star Trek? Probably the Spocks. Or maybe like a Q, someone in the Q continuum. Maybe Guinans. Maybe a little bit of Guinan, maybe a little bit of give me a second, I could do this. Martina Sirtis, her character. What's her alien species called? You got the Vulcans, who are mental. They're totally mental. She's Deanna Troi, but what kind of... She's an empath. And she's like the opposite of the mental kind. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Now, Spock dies at the end of Star Trek 2. Star Trek 3, you gotta find him now, because they were like, oh, we ejected his body onto this planet, and his body's gonna regenerate. So he placed his brainwaves inside of bones. And they even set that up really well in Star Trek 2. He touches Bones' face and says, remember. And he puts his consciousness inside of Bones, and then his body, I guess, sort of like a empty shell or automaton or whatever, dies at the end of Star Trek 2, and it's very sad. It's very sad. And then we spend all of Star Trek 3 looking for him. Star Trek 3 is pretty good. However, it's not my favorite. I do love Star Trek 4 because they play around with the whole concept of how different they are in the future versus today, because they use time travel. And among the Star Trek movies, there's a couple of them that use time travel. Almost 3 of them. At least 3 of them. 4 of them. How many Star Trek movies use time travel as a device? That's kind of like... It's kind of cheating, really. Star Trek 4 really emphasized the fact that time travel is not easy, that they gotta go around the sun, their heads have to become computer animated, and then they're gonna go back into 1986 and 1987, the Bay Area, San Francisco. People weren't that freaked out when they saw all the people dressed up like Star Treks in 1987 in the Bay Area, because they were just like, oh, is San Francisco. Everybody lets their hair down here. You could wear that suit that nobody will think twice. They actually just filmed the crew, the cast, which is a crew. That's confusing in terms of of terminology. But William Shatner, Chekhov, all of the characters. Yeah, Walter Koenig and Nichelle Nichols, they all were dressed in their Star Trek uniforms on the streets of San Francisco, which is going to be the future base for the Federation, actually, and Starfleet Academy. That's where you go. That's the headquarters of the Federation of Planets is in San Francisco, of course. That makes perfect sense, actually. Probably one of the most technologically advanced places on Earth, if not the most culturally and technologically advanced places on the planet. So, of course, San Francisco is the center of the universe, of the Star Trek universe. And they just candid camera style, punked style, filmed them going up to people on the street asking them about a nuclear vessel. Because, of course, the nuclear vessel is in the I don't know, it's in that bay, the Golden State Bay. I don't know what it's called. But that's where they hide the nuclear bombs. So that part of the movie is actually just people on the street that are really reacting to them and looking at them funny. I love that. You got to save the whales. And that's what Star Trek's about. Star Trek 4 is about... You guys see Star Trek 4? That's when the alien ship comes to Earth, shuts down all the things like kind of coronavirus just did. It shuts down the planet. Shuts off all the power. Everybody has to stay inside. And there's this looming threat creating this sound. Maybe coronavirus, we got to go back in time and bring something here to cure it. Because what the solution was, Spock figured out, is like, oh, these sounds that this alien orb are making are just the sounds of whales that are long extinct. Because Leonard Nimoy, director of Star Trek 4, is a environmentalist and was like, hey, why don't we make a movie about how we can be better to our planet or else everything's going to go to crap. So they made an allegory about saving the whales. And they brought those whales back from 1988 to the future. And the whales talked to the alien ship, and then the ships... Right now, I just feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger describing movies. Arnold, this is me in the Running Man, and then I took the chainsaw and I cut the buzzsaw in half, and then I said he had to split. This is me killing Sub-Zero, and then when he dies, I said, Sub-Zero, now Plane Zero. Maybe I'll just quote Arnold for the... I'll quote Arnold quoting Arnold for the rest of the show. How about that? This is me in Kindergarten Cop when I pick up the kid and he spits out his food and I say, these aren't your lunches? You mean you've been eating other people's lunches? Stop it! Oh, that's so good. I mean, I don't blame that kid from Kindergarten Cop spitting out his lunch, because if Arnold picked you up and told you to stop eating other people's lunches, you would stop immediately and spit them out all over yourself. Star Trek 5 is the problem. That's definitely the worst Star Trek movie. Star Trek 5. And then Generations. Star Trek 5 is terrible because the hubris of William Shatner, after Leonard Nimoy just directed 2 films, Star Trek 3 and 4, Leonard Nimoy also plays Spock. So Spock directed Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4. Star Trek 3 and 4. Then Captain Kirk was like, oh, very much like our current president. I have an inkling that William Shatner might be a touch narcissistic, because he was like, oh, you got to direct a movie. That means I can direct movies. That doesn't mean that, because if you watch Star Trek 5, it's terrible. It's a terrible, bad movie that makes no sense and is also awful. It's not good. So he had that thing where he's like, hey, Paramount Pictures, we just had 2 highly successful films that were directed by Spock. What about giving the captain a try? And I think Paramount was probably like, I mean, well, he is the captain, and I don't know. And it was such a bad call. What a dumb movie. It's bad. But they redeemed themselves because Mark Leonard, writer director of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, came back for Star Trek VI. He came back and made a good movie. He made a good movie with Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. I love how Star Trek V was straight up called The Final Frontier, because they were like, hey, everybody, we're bringing it home. We're wrapping it up. It's going to be over. It literally makes no sense that a bunch of people in their 70s are still flying ships. I don't know if they were in their 70s yet. If Captain Kirk is 175 years old, and that was 400 years ago, I don't know how to do math. They were old, but it was fine because I don't care. Just keep giving me the same stuff. I'll suspend my disbelief so long as you give me Bill and Ted at 55 years old. I will watch that. They don't have to change a thing. They could still be the same people. Star Trek 6, though, quite good. But they were really teasing the fact that they were wrapping up the film series with Star Trek 5. But they did introduce some cool stuff in Star Trek 5, like gravity boots. Gravity boots are now kind of a staple of the Star Trek universe, because gravity boots were actually integral in Star Trek 6. So the movies still build upon each other. Kind of like Star Wars episodes 8 and 9. Even though people don't like Star Wars episode 8, they did introduce a lot of cool things, like the Jedi Skyping that Kylo Ben and Reylo do. That whole Jedi Skype situation is now a part of the thing, a part of the universe. Great touch introduced by Rian Johnson. Brilliant. I've not read the Tech Wars books by William Shatner yet. I also question how much William Shatner is actually the author of the Tech Wars books. William Shatner might have been like, nah, put my name on that and say that I did it. Nah. Rescue 911. T.J. Hooker. The show about lawyers. I'm just naming series that William Shatner was on that I didn't watch, except for Rescue 911. Remember Rescue 911, guys? William Shatner every week telling us these terrible stories, but usually having a happy ending. Speaking of happy endings, we're going to wrap up in about 6 minutes, but we still didn't even get halfway through the Star Trek movies. We're only on Star Trek 5 or 6. Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, really brought things back and integrated it into the Next Generation because Worf's grandfather is in it. And I love that Michael Dorn, who plays the character Worf, has the best contract with all of the Star Trek movies. I might do that again. If I do that, rap me on the knuckles with a ruler if I accidentally say Star Wars instead of Star Trek. That will teach me. So the funny part about Michael Dorn's contract is that he was basically contracted to be in every Star Trek movie ever after he appeared in Star Trek 6, and he was also in Deep Space Nine, so you gotta have Worf all the time. Worf all day. Michael Dorn, his face is like scarred because of they had to like glue every day onto his face his forehead. Remember, Worf had the Klingon forehead? So if you look at Michael Dorn, he actually, in interviews, you see he's got like scars here because the little prosthetic, the pieces would not cut into his face, they would just rub against his face and the glue and everything all day, every day for 12 hours a day for as many years as the series was on, 7, 8, 9 years. So now he's got like permanent scarring. And that's not good when you're an actor to have scarring on your face, but that's dedication to a role of Worf. But he got to play Worf in every movie, even when it didn't make sense, like in the Next Generation movies. Generations, I'm going to skip over Star Trek 7 because it's bad. It's also a bad movie. However, it is a way you can bring Captain Kirk back if they want to bring Captain Kirk back into the new JJ verse. Because get this, guys, remember in Star Trek 7 Generations, there was the Nexus, and within the Nexus, time didn't exist, and the two captains met, Picard and Kirk, and then they come out of the Nexus. Well, dig this. What if you just go back in the Nexus where time doesn't exist and re-encounter them, because time doesn't exist, so it doesn't matter if he left the Nexus, because he's always in the Nexus, because Guinan is always in the Nexus. Remember that? She was in the Nexus still. I'm going to say Nexus so much that Nexus hair products will send me some hot oil treatments. So she was in there also, because she's always in there. So Captain Kirk is always in there. So if you want to bring the Nexus device back into the new JJ verse and pull Captain Kirk out as a 175-year-old captain, I'm for it. Let's do that. Star Trek 7's bad. Generations is not good. That's the one where Captain Kirk dies. Spoiler. But he doesn't really, because he's inside the Nexus forever. Star Trek 8 is the best Next Generation movie. It's got the Borg. Fantastical. But it also has time travel. But I like that it has time travel back from the future to still the future. Basically 2088 or something like that. I thought that was pretty cool. I love that even though tempted by having actual flesh and almost becoming a real boy, Data still is he has solidarity with his crew and helps defeat the Borg. Data has become a very integral part of the Star Trek universe, obviously. That's why they keep bringing him back. He's one of the beloved characters. But then you get to Star Trek 9, Insurrection. That one puts me to sleep every time. I mentioned that earlier. Just thinking about it makes me tired. I don't want to watch that one ever. I don't ever want to finish watching it because I feel like it still leaves me something to do to fall asleep to. Star Trek Nemesis, serviceable, not bad at all. We've got a minute and a half left on Instagram. But if you guys want to wrap up this conversation with me over on YouTube, AristotleFullThrottle.com. Otherwise, join me every day here on Instagram, live, on all of the things. I've got to figure out a better sound situation for my Instagram because you guys are probably hearing a lot of hiss. I'm going to keep that thought to myself and just fix it. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to wrap up with the JJ verse over at AristotleFullThrottle.com. Probably another 5 or 10 minutes because there's so much to discuss. This is like a 2-day show. Maybe we'll bring it back tomorrow. If you guys are for it, let me know. Otherwise, you guys are awesome for joining me. You know, rubber baby buggy bumpers. Remember, Sully, remember when I said I'd kill you last? I lied. I'm going to just go out with some Arnold Schwarzenegger quotes. What else? Stick around. I said stick around when the guy came up next to me and I threw my knife into him and he stuck to the wall. And then I said stick around. So you guys can stick around over at AristotleFullThrottle.com. We'll wrap it up. Star Trek Nemesis, Tom Hardy. Pretty good. Not bad, actually. Fine of a movie. Except I can't not conflate the actor who played a young Picard in the series Star Trek The Next Generation. There was an episode where Picard gets stabbed through his heart, if you guys remember that. We'll talk about that. But Instagram, I'm Aristotle Full Throttle. Your bro in the know with the fro. And I'll see you tomorrow. So guys, I don't know if you remember, but there was an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, sorry for the squeaking, where Picard was played by a different actor at a young age. When he was at Starfleet Academy, he got into a drunken bar fight and got stabbed through the heart. So Picard, that's how he has his artificial heart, or his heart transplant. That's digging deep. That's a deep cut right there, literally. Nemesis, guys. What did you think about Nemesis? Now we get to the JJ verse, guys. Maybe we'll talk about the JJ verse stuff tomorrow. We'll actually do a second half to this talk. It'll be almost Star Trek week, just to do a raspberry in the face of Star Wars week. Not that I hate Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Actually, I love Star Wars. It's such a great idea. It's such a great promise that kind of drops the ball. And Star Trek, it's great. I love it. There's no reason to ever stop making Star Trek movies, really. Because there's no overarching theme, though Star Trek's 2, 3, and 4, those are a trilogy, if we remember. So those feel very complete. If you start with Wrath of Khan and end with The Voyage Home, that is a complete story right there. Complete story arc. It's really fun. We can do all things Abrams tomorrow. Will's suggesting that we do all things Abrams, excluding Star Wars. Interesting. I think we can still include Star Wars. However, maybe we'll save it, and if it comes up organically, we'll talk about it. But it's hard to talk about JJ and not talk about Star Trek and not talk about Star Wars. So it's hard to do that because he's done 2 of both. He's directed 2 Star Treks and produced the third one, and he's produced 3 Star Wars movies and directed 2. So he's even in both universes. Interesting. I love how you get that deal. You're like, yeah, I'll direct the first in the trilogy as long as I get named producer for the second of it, and then maybe I'll direct the third one. It's a pretty good deal. But I like that idea. We'll do that. We'll save that for tomorrow. Tomorrow at noon, every day at noon, Monday through Friday, Aristotle Full Throttle. Your bro in the know with the fro. And thank you guys again. I really appreciate you guys joining me every day. It's actually, today we have lots of viewers. I think we had maybe a dozen or so people at one time, which is pretty good. That's the most we've had all month. It's been about a month or so. A month and a week, maybe. I don't know. It's been 473 days. Yeah. Tasha Yar. Did they bring back Romulan Tasha Yar for Nemesis? This is what Will says. I don't remember, but I love that Denise Crosby was like, I'm too big for Star Trek. And then she left and people were like, what? Denise Crosby who? And then 3 seasons later, she's like, I'm a Romulan now. I was just in a different dimension. I'm back as Yar for an episode. And you're not supposed to even notice. But then I love that about Star Trek. Because they'll keep you in the family forever. And I'm going to keep you guys in the family forever. Because I appreciate you showing up every day. Making this a thing. We're making this a thing, guys. Non-stop. We're going to go for broke. 1 million subscribers. We just got about 1 million to go. I'm Aristotle Full Throttle, your bro in the know with the fro, and I'll see you tomorrow.